Chris Trump for KaijuPop.com, and this is Geometry Wars 3 Dimensions on PS4 here. It's pretty much out for everything except for Nintendo platforms. Having been released earlier this week, and I played a little bit of Geometry Wars 1 or 2, because this started out as an Easter egg of all things in one of the Project Gotham racing games on the Xbox, the original Xbox, and then it became its own thing with Retro Evolved, and then Geometry Wars 2, and now there's a third one of it, Dimensions. And yeah, I played a little bit of it when it was this mini game, and I played a tiny bit on 360, I think, of just Retro Evolved. So I don't really have that much of an attachment to Geometry Wars in general, but I know it's something that everybody fawns very heavily over. So it's one of those where they've made a lot of changes to this one, and it seems to be either you really love the changes or you really don't. There's all the new stuff is in adventure mode, but there's also classic mode, which is basically Geometry Wars 2, all of it in one thing. There's some bonus stuff. There's local co-op, which is very distracting. It kind of populates the screen with another ship, and it all gets very, very confusing and very, very hectic, but quite good fun. And there's online modes as well, but let's jump into the adventure mode here. So adventure, you get up to 50 stages. Whoosh, you have to get all the way to the end. And I am not very far into this one because it is fairly difficult, and everything's determined by a sort of mobile game style star system. You get up to 3 stars for meaning score targets, and right now I'm at the point to unlock the next boss. I have to have 16 stars. I've only got 14, so let's retry an earlier stage to try and get that done better, shall we? Let's go with this one. And the twists that the Geometry Wars 3 Dimensions has over the other versions is that the stages, or most of them, are in 3D spaces where you're moving around the outside of a 3D geometrical shape as opposed to simply a 2D one. But this is the Evolved game mode, so we are actually going to play a little bit more of traditional Geometry Wars stuff here. You have a drone, or you unlock a drone once you've beaten the first boss, so they kind of help by following you around and shooting stuff up, and it's a matter of sort of unlocking a whole bunch of these and then combining them with your super, which is something you trigger anytime with the L2 button. And I've only unlocked one of those as well. So different supers combined with different drones to produce different effects. So that's kind of a new thing. They've also got their own upgrade paths there. So I'm just going to go with the ones that I have. And the cool thing about the adventure mode is that you have a bunch of these little stages that don't take very long to play at all. We're talking about sort of 5 minutes first, if that, to have a go, so to speak. But they expose you to all different kinds of stages and all kinds of different game modes as well. So it's not just, hey, like this traditional Evolved, see how far you can get with 3 lives, but it'll be set a certain score within a time limit, or, do all this as the walls of the stage are closing in, or, if you beat this wave of enemies, then that'll be a checkpoint and will give you more time to keep playing. So it keeps things really, really varied and really sort of exciting and interesting. But yeah, essentially this is a twin-stick shooter, and there's been a lot of these, especially sort of indie twin-stick shooters on PS4, it seems, especially. Maybe not necessarily twin-stick things, but doing the sort of thing that Geometry Wars did really, really well, which is switch arcade-style action where the emphasis is on beating people in your friends list with your high scores. There's just been a ton of these, like everything from Velocity 2X, which I really liked earlier in the year, TXK, although that was on Vita, but I think that's coming to PS4. Love Drowsers, PSN on PlayStation formats, you know, I think they all sort of scratch that itch, so the competition is really deep for Geometry Wars now as opposed to in prior years. I've got to get up to 5 million points with my last life here. This isn't good. So I'm going to trigger my super, and that means my drone lays down proximity mines at a certain rate of knots. So I've got one super to use one per stage, also one smart bomb to use per stage. So you definitely want to do that. And the green tea leaf things that I am picking up, those are very important, because of course shooting enemies will get points, but the way you earn score multipliers... Crap. Oh, but I did beat my target. There you go. So at least I upgraded to 2 stars instead of 1. Hurrah! And I got a trophy, gold one too. Not bad. Yes, the tea leaves, very important. You want to get all the tea leaves because that's how your score multiplier goes up, and that's what separates a shitty score from a good one. So it is kind of cool, the upgrade paths that you have, the fact that it's not good enough to simply get 1 star and everything, because right now I'm missing I can't get into the 10th level. If I just got 1 star and everything, I'd have 9 stars, and that's nowhere near enough. But you don't mind going back into these stages at all, because A, they're a lot shorter, you know, but a lot shorter than what, but they're very short, but B, you know, it's like, oh, now I've collected enough gems to upgrade this drone, so I'm going to give it more firepower. So I'm going to do that. There you go. And now it's going to be more powerful, which would make it, in theory, easier to pull off the stage now. I upgraded the drone, so I can't upgrade the super, but let's see how well we can do here. So this is Deadline, which is a 2-minute mode where, you know, it's just shoot as much as you can within 2 minutes. You see, like, the stages change shape to an extent. I think what kind of rings true about Geometry Wars as opposed to other twin-stick shooters, there's a really Minter-esque feel to this, Jeff Minter-esque feel, and it's really, I mean, I brought up TXK before. Crap, that's no good at all. In these modes, you can die as much as you want, but I mean that costs you time, and it also reduces your score multiplier. And it squanders that wave because the entire wave of enemies disappears, so basically your earning potential goes way down. Yes, this reminds me a lot of Tempest, actually, even though Tempest was hardly a twin-stick shooter and a very different kind of game. But in that, the stages change shape. You know, every time you go into the next level, it's a different shape. That reminds me a lot of Tempest. The abstract shapes, of course, are very tempestuous, Tempest-esque, and yeah, that I count as a good thing. And also where I think specifically it's wasted. I just triggered my mind, so it'll disappear because I died. I think where it becomes more Minter-esque, like a Mint take on Tempest 2000 or TXK, as opposed to the original arcade game, is that it's really careful. There's a smart bomb repair. It's really careful to be, I guess, kind of fair, but also to confuse you at every opportunity. I was so close there. Oh my goodness. 1.986 million. I just needed 14,000 more. So happily you can quickly retry. Also, if you're really quick, it won't even load that screen. You saw there was a prompt to hit square, which case, you know, just, hey, restart straight off the bat. So it's that trials kind of thing of, hey, keep going, you know, which is encouraging. Yes, even though it's fair, the game kind of takes every length to be sort of obfuscatory and confuse you as much as possible visually. It throws so much at you, and it isn't, you know, it isn't an accidental thing of, oh, this game's screwed up because nothing here is clear. It's more that part of the challenge is passing what's going on and having a cooler head prevail. That's why in two-player co-op, it's, you know, I had a quick go with a friend. It was really difficult to play at first because when you're playing in two-player, you have a yellow ship. One of you's the yellow ship, and one of you's the red ship. But there's also yellow and red enemies all over the place, and you're firing yellow and red bullets all over the place. So it kind of becomes suddenly, even though it should be easier to have two of you on the screen at once, it actually becomes a good deal harder in a sense because, or at least the difficulty's leveled out. Because all of a sudden it becomes very, very much difficult, more difficult rather, to read the situation in front of you and how you should act. I don't think I'm going to do this. It's going to be really close again. Have I done it? Have I done it? Yes, just about. So we unlock the next boss stage here.
Complete.
Hooray! Cool. So now it will give me a helpful pop-up, say how go beat the Ruby boss. And the bosses, so well, say such they are. So far, I've only fought one. They're kind of interesting because the boss game mode isn't so much. I do want to beat the boss, but the more important thing is I want to beat the target scores that are placed in front of me. And I can choose to go straight for the boss and whittle down its energy bar. And I need to do that so that it gives me more time to keep advancing. But I also, for points' sake, for easy points, I want to pick off all the minions here as well. And you can see that, oh man, okay, this time it's only giving me one life. Okay, you kind of have to be aware of what the rules are at any one time. So no wonder the score target at 1 million is fairly low. But you can see like here where we're in one of these 3D arenas and it does get pretty confusing. And that's kind of the, you know, that's kind of this game's MO, is to be confusing and intentionally not opaque, but you know, it's clear what you're supposed to do. It's just, you know, sometimes it's very difficult to wrap your head around these spaces, and that's what you have to do. So I can get, I think like a lot of the positives and the negatives so far have been centered around how different this feels to Geometry Wars 3, and some people, you know, it's the difference between people saying, you know, you took this game that was very successful, but rather than, wow, I'm really getting caned by this thing. But rather than following a template, you've gone ahead and made something completely different, although it still has some of the same feel as the original. And those are the people that love the game, and then the people that aren't as in love with it are saying, well, hey, you know, Geometry Wars was perfect as it was, pretty much, and now you've gone and changed it. How dare you make something different? I'm typically on the side of making things that are different. I'm a big fan of different things, normally. So, yeah, it's just that I actually, you know, as I said at the start here, I really didn't play that much of the first two, you know, or the first few Geometry Wars games, so, you know, my opinion's kind of moot in that regard. and it's more about sort of playing it on its own merits. And I'm not exactly on its own merits. I'm not entirely convinced either one way or the other yet. I definitely see what's really fun about Geometry Wars, and we'll see a little bit of the original or the classic mode. I think once I'm done with this, let's give this boss one more. Let's give myself one more chance to beat this sucker. But yeah, I mean, I can certainly see what makes it so addictive, and I think like the even though it is a mobile phone game trope to have a star-based system pervade everything. Oh, we did it this time. To have a star-based system, you know, be your progression thing and be the way that you unlock stuff. It works here, and it really does feel good to come back to everything, and it feels incredibly compelling. Like having a 3-star system really kind of makes you feel, oh, I just narrowly missed out on my target before, so I'm going to go and get it. And there's this competitive thing of, you know, Geometry Wars was and always has been really good at telling you, you know, when your friends who have the game, and I think people on my friends list who have the game really haven't gotten very far with it so far, just stage 4 there. You know, there's this competitive edge as well, which is awesome. But let's come back out here and check out some of the classic mode. Classic mode is, I'm reliably informed, pretty much all of Geometry Wars 2. So you've got the different modes here. Classic, which again, as I said, you've got a time limit, you've got to do it. King, which is interesting. In this, it's kind of like, it's a survival mode, you only have one life, but the twist is you have these circles on screen and you can only shoot when you are within the circles. So it's a thing of, do you venture out of your safe zone to collect score multipliers. Also, these zones are continually contracting, so you can't stay in one place too long. It's much more kind of slower paced variant, and I mean, I think that's what's always been the appeal of Geometry Wars, is that yes, it's a twin-stick shooter, but there's enough variety in it to reward different playstyles. That was pretty terrible though, but hey, never mind. Evolved, as you might expect. I think we had this earlier on. But we had this earlier on a weird kind of slightly twisted forest, and here we are just on the Geometry Wars rectangle of death. Yeah, this one I actually played a fair amount of this on remote play on the Vita, because my wife was watching something on TV the other day. And it makes me want a Vita version of this so badly. You know, I think like a few visual effects stripped out here or there, and the Vita could probably run this. You know, a slightly less pretty version of it. But it is just because it's got, oh, those enemies there, you have to run so you can, like, little, I don't know. I was going to say ski jumps, but not ski gates, you know what I mean? Those gates that skiers pass through. Slalom gates? No, you go around a slalom gate. What are those things? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, my wife was watching something on TV, so it was a waste of time. Also, you don't have drones in classic modes, so but you do have 4 smart bombs. So I've got those to play with. I have to remember that I still have them. Yeah, so I was playing a lot of this on remote play, and it's really well suited. Either the short goes in classic mode, where it's just one more go and you want to come back in and do it, or the short stages in adventure mode. I mean, they're perfectly suited to handheld gameplay. And the only thing is that I guess I should probably tweak my settings on remote play, but then that would change it for everything. But yeah, I mean, the only thing is your super and your smart bomb are on the rear touchpad, because they're R2 and L2. So that's kind of difficult to get to in the heat at the moment, but I really enjoyed it just on remote play. So if there's any possibility of this coming to Vita, I would be a very happy man indeed. Yeah, I mean, I think Geometry Wars did actually come to DS, the original DS. There was a version of Geometry Wars, I believe, and I think Geometry Wars 2 came out on iPhone in the end, but I'm never convinced by this kind of thing on iPhone twin-stick shooters. There's a lot of them, and I don't like any of them, basically. Now it's getting all kinds of crazy with black holes and still, I don't know, I can manage to get an extra life at some point. Hooray! I thought it was all over. It's not yet. No, I'm just using all my smart bombs at this point, quite frankly. It's so brain-warpingly confusing. But there we go. Okay, I completely decimated that high score there. I don't want to do that in the game. And then pacifism, which is the famous one where it's how long can you survive without being able to shoot anything at all. I haven't tried this mode yet, so let's see how far we can go. I mean, it's kind of one of these things where, you know, I always feel like I should apologize for not talking enough, but it's so obvious what it is by looking at it. It's very self-explanatory, even though, you know, it's immensely challenging and immensely difficult, and kind of with its own set of strategies and own kind of philosophy. It is kind of what you see is what you get ultimately, but it's really good at it. And yeah, I think the thing is though, now that it's in a very different space now than when it was an early Xbox Live Arcade downloadable game, and it was such a great advertisement for what downloadable games could be in the mid-2000s, and how social connected games could be, you know, in terms of providing this sort of arcade style thrill, and, you know, that sort of high score chasing mentality. There weren't many games like that at the time, and now just this year and just on PlayStation there have been tons and tons and tons. So it's something that I think I'm looking forward to putting more time into, but I'm going to need to put more time into to really be sure whether it's the difference, you know, whether it's really good or whether it's absolutely excellent. I'm not sure. It's not quite. I wouldn't say it's as revolutionary as or as significant or as relevant perhaps as Geometry Wars has been in the past, but on its own merits, it's really cool. So yeah, Geometry Wars 3 Dimensions. It's on pretty much everything right now. Chris John for CozyPub.com. Thanks for watching. Bye.